My name is Tyler Hale, and until not so long ago, I believe my life was fairly straightforward. Maybe not a grand fairy tale, but stable enough. A decent house, regular job, a routine that felt familiar, and a marriage to Miranda that had spanned nearly 7 years. Our life was like many others. Bills to pay, a yard that always needed mowing, weekend grocery runs, occasional squabbles that typically ended in quiet apologies. Nothing about it seemed remarkable, but I found comfort in that ordinariness. It's strange how your sense of normal can collapse in a single moment. Sometimes that moment arrives like a storm you saw looming on the horizon. Sometimes it just blindsides you, striking like lightning out of a clear sky. For me, it was the latter. One evening, while cleaning up after a casual gathering, I overheard a sentence I wish I could unhear. I'd been in the kitchen, collecting plates and utensils, listening distantly to the low murmur of conversation from the living room. It was Miranda's voice that rose above the others, so casual and easy, yet so sharp it cut straight through me. "You can't please anyone." She was laughing when she said it, laughing with her family and friends. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, light, dismissive, as though it were a simple statement of fact. That alone would have stung, but then came a wave of laughter from the people in that room. A hearty, genuine laugh, as if they all agreed that I, Tyler, was some pitiful figure of mockery. I stood there, bracing my hands against the counter, heart pounding in my chest. I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe she was talking about something else like a coworker or a reference to a general scenario. But the conviction in her voice, the unguarded scorn, told me the truth. She was speaking about me, and not in a gentle, teasing manner, but with a cold, half-mocking tone that implied I was incompetent, unworthy of respect. I prayed she'd backtrack, soften the blow. Maybe say she was joking, or at least sound apologetic. But she didn't. She went on talking, voice drifting into another topic, while the echoes of "he can't please anyone" ricocheted inside my skull. I wasn't angry at first. The initial feeling was an acute humiliation, like my face was on fire, but my limbs felt frozen. Her words weighed heavily, especially realizing this wasn't the first time. My mind reeled back, sifting through memories of subtle jabs. Yes, it had happened before, though never so plainly. In jokes among her siblings, in snide remarks about my forgetfulness, in half-compliments overshadowed by a negative punchline. Had I truly been so blind? I placed the dishes in the sink, trying to steady my breathing. Through the archway, I could see her silhouette. Miranda, my wife, still talking. Her mother giggled at something she said, and I caught a snippet of a phrase. "He never gets anything right." Another wave of laughter. My chest tightened, tears threatening to form. Not tears of sorrow exactly, but more the shock of discovering how little respect she had for me. After years of trying my best, after all the times I bent over backward to show her I cared, to ensure she was happy, it turned out that behind my back she saw me as a joke. I waited in the kitchen, pretending to be busy, letting the conversation fade to a softer murmur. Eventually, they shifted topics, some casual gossip about a mutual friend. My shoulders felt stiff, my head rang with her words. My instincts told me to keep calm, finish out the evening. So I returned to the living room with a forced neutral expression, gathering more cups and plates. She offered me a polite smile, like she had no idea what I'd just heard. Something inside me felt irreparably broken at that moment. The weight of realization, when the guests finally left, a swirl of goodbyes, thank yous, have a great night, I was left alone with Miranda in the echo of our now quiet living room. She turned to me, smiling as if expecting me to say, "Great party, huh?" Or, "Let's watch a movie now." I just stared at her, searching her face for remorse or a hint of guilt, or something that might say, "I'm sorry for humiliating you to my friends." But there was nothing. She looked oblivious. The final dish was set in the dishwasher, the lock clicked, and I wiped my hands on a towel. She asked if everything was okay. That was her standard line when she sensed I was upset. "Is everything okay, Tyler?" She repeated, her voice holding an edge. The edge that suggests, "I hope you're not going to start a fight." For the first time, I found myself not wanting to placate her. I responded with a quiet, "I'm fine," but the word felt hollow. Then I retreated upstairs, ignoring her narrowed eyes. She called after me, "Tyler." "Hello?" But I just mumbled, "I'm tired. We'll talk later." I locked myself in the bathroom, letting my reflection stare back at me from the mirror. My heart drummed in my chest, adrenaline swirling. I realized how easily I'd been manipulated in the past. Somehow convinced that every negative thing was either my fault or not that big a deal. But it was a big deal, and tonight that realization refused to be brushed aside. I slept fitfully, my mind replaying her words. The sound of her laughter, the casual cruelty of "he can't please anyone." It roared in my head, transforming into a theme. I am worthless. I am incompetent. I am unloved. By morning, a numb determination set in. Something had changed that I couldn't ignore. Tracing the old patterns, over the next few days, I found myself noticing all the subtle ways she put me down. Like how, in front of her mother, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Oh, Tyler's never been good with tools," after I tried to fix a squeaky hinge. Or how she teased me about my cooking attempts. "Better if you let me handle it, before you burn the house down." She said it with a smirk, but I saw behind that smirk a smugness, a sense of moral or intellectual superiority. Previously, I might have forced a sheepish laugh, as if it were harmless. But now each remark felt like a fresh cut. I noticed how she rarely used my name in conversation, even when addressing me. She'd just say, "Hey," or "you," like an afterthought. How, in front of her siblings, she'd mention me only as a problem to solve or an example of how not to do something. The reality was staggering. She had no respect for me, maybe never had. Or if she once did, it was long gone. At first, I wondered if I should confront her, demand an apology for that night. But I realized that it wouldn't matter. She'd probably say, "I didn't mean it like that," or "You're overreacting." I heard those lines before. Or she'd turn it on me, claiming I was being too sensitive or insecure. So I decided to remain silent, letting her barbs land without reaction. Let her see what happens when I no longer give her the satisfaction of defending myself. This shift didn't go unnoticed by her. She grew uneasy when I stopped retorting to her criticisms or sarcastic jokes. She watched me carefully after each remark as if expecting me to protest. But I refused to be drawn in. Instead, I stored each barb in memory, fueling my resolve not to keep playing her game. Some nights, I'd find myself lying awake, replaying each put-down she made over the years, wishing I'd stood up for myself sooner. Shifting the power. One Saturday afternoon, we were in the kitchen and she criticized me for how I chopped vegetables. "You're doing it all wrong," she snapped. I set the knife down calmly and shrugged, "And then do it yourself." She blinked, taken aback. She tried to stammer something about me being lazy or incompetent, but I just walked away, heading to the backyard. The old me would have apologized, let her have her way. But that day, I let it stand. I was done bending. A few times, I'd overheard her on the phone with her sister, complaining that I had become cold, a different person. She was half in tears, whining about how I wasn't fulfilling my duties as a husband. "He's just ignoring me," I heard her say. I can't stand it. But ironically, I realized how she made me ignore her. She'd hammered my self-esteem for so long, I had no interest left in pleasing her. Interestingly, she never apologized for her remarks in front of others. Instead, she retreated into a mixture of confusion and indignation, as though I was the one who betrayed her. The dynamic of our household turned tense, a quiet standoff. Friends who visited us sensed something was off. The energy in the living room was thick, but we both faked politeness to avoid scandal. I saw her try to slip in subtle digs once or twice during these visits, but each time I barely responded, leaving her with nothing to latch onto. Reflection on past efforts. One night, I found an old scrapbook in a closet, pictures from our dating days and early marriage. We looked so content, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. I remember how I used to surprise her with small gifts, plan weekend getaways, always seeking new ways to spark her joy. Did she appreciate it then? Maybe momentarily. But looking back, I recall that even then she had a knack for backhanded compliments. "This is sweet, but you chose pink. That's not really my color. You never notice details, do you?" At the time, I brushed it off. I told myself, she's just picky, or she's got high standards. But high standards had devolved into open ridicule. While flipping through those photos, I felt grief for the man I was, so earnest, so desperate to be loved by her. Now that man was gone. In his place was someone hardened and no longer willing to keep the peace at his own expense. The deeper lesson, she began to realize I was checking out emotionally. She tried new tactics, suddenly acting nicer, cooking my favorite meals. But each kind gesture came off forced, like she was trying to restore the old dynamic of me being grateful for her attention. I accepted the meals politely, but I didn't gush over them. Let her do the cooking if she likes. I wouldn't argue or ask for it. My neutrality infuriated her, ironically. "Don't you even appreciate that I made this?" she'd snap. I give a half shrug. "Sure, it's fine." She'd storm off, slamming a cupboard, complaining that I was so ungrateful. The irony was staggering. She who spent years mocking my efforts demanded I show gratitude for hers now that she was on uneasy footing. At times, I wanted to grin bitterly. Let her feel its sting of not being recognized. Let her taste the emptiness I endured every time she belittled me. But truth be told, the petty sense of victory was hollow. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to be free from this cycle of contempt and submission. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized we had two paths. Either continue this cold war until our relationship eroded completely or part ways. The kids complicated that choice. They adored both of us. Splitting up meant appending their stability, possibly dragging them into a messy custody arrangement. So for the time being, we coexisted. We shared a roof, finances, child-rearing tasks, but we were no longer truly spouses. She was a roommate I barely tolerated, a partner in name only. I occasionally let myself daydream about leaving altogether. Maybe renting a small apartment in town, seeing the kids on weekends, building a new life. But imagine my children's faces if I walked away, especially over just an argument, as she probably spin it, kept me frozen. So I trudged on day after day, swallowing the uneasy hush that filled the house. The eventual eruption. A few weeks after that humiliating dinner, we had another family gathering at her parents' place. I braced myself, expecting more subtle jabs from her in front of everyone. But ironically, she was on her best behavior. Polite, even affectionate, as though trying to project an image of a perfect marriage. I played along with the facade for the sake of the kids. But as soon as one cousin teased me about "Can't Tyler do that job?" referencing some small home improvement task, I saw her flinch. She was likely recalling how she'd ridiculed me. This time I responded calmly, "I can handle it if I choose to," and left it at that. Silence fell. Her cousin blinked, quickly changing the subject. The oldie might have laughed awkwardly or tried to explain I wasn't incompetent. Not anymore. Let them see the new me. Returning home that evening, we put the kids to bed and I settled onto the couch. She joined me hesitantly. We watched half an hour of mindless TV. Then she turned the volume down, turning toward me. "Miranda, Tyler, I want to talk. About us." I stared at the darkened TV screen, exhaling. "Go ahead," I said quietly. Her voice trembled slightly. "Look, I know I said some things that hurt you. I shouldn't have mocked you that night. I realize how you must have felt. I'm sorry, truly." A flicker of sincerity glimmered in her eyes. For a moment, I wondered if I'd be moved. But the memory of her cruelty rang louder. "It's not just that night," I said. "It's been years of small digs, constant criticisms. That night was just the final straw." She looked down, hands twisting in her lap. I guess I can realize how far it had gone. Sometimes you do these little jokes and," she trailed off. I could feel her struggling to find the right words. "I'm sorry," she repeated. "Can we fix this?" The question hung in the air. Could we? Did I even want that anymore? After all the belittling, after seeing how she viewed me, was there any chance at genuine respect? I don't know. I admitted, my voice subdued. "I'm not sure I have anything left for you." She started crying softly, apologizing again, saying she never intended to tear me down, and it was her way of coping with her own frustrations. I listened, but my chest felt numb. Maybe the love we once had was too wounded to revive. Maybe she was only sorry now because she saw me slipping away. For the kids, we agreed not to escalate things, at least not to a full-blown separation yet. She said she'd work on her negativity. I said I'd keep being civil. An uneasy compromise. We parted ways that night. She to our bed, me to the couch, a silent acknowledgement that while we might share a house, we didn't share a marriage in the real sense anymore. The present dilemma. And so we remain, two people in a single home, parenting effectively enough, no major fights. On the surface, we appear normal, but we're not. We're two hollow souls avoiding each other's eyes. She tries to be less critical, and I appreciate the absence of jabs, though it feels forced, as if she's stepping on eggshells. Meanwhile, I no longer yearn for her approval. I no longer watch her for hints of affection or acceptance. I've grown used to the emptiness between us. Sometimes I think, maybe this is all we can manage until the kids are older. Then we'll divorce quietly or drift apart so thoroughly that separation becomes a formality. Part of me wonders if, in time, we might truly reconcile. But that would require trust and respect, both absent. The kids for now remain unaware of the deeper rift. They see us cooperating for their needs, not suspecting how close we came to imploding. We shield them from that pain. Truth be told, I feel a cautious sense of power in being free from her hold. She can't hurt me with her words anymore because I no longer base my worth on her opinion. She tries to behave now, tries to be nice, but the damage is done. I seek her fleeting remorse, but I can't forget the years of contempt. We're stuck in this uneasy arrangement, living a lie for the sake of two innocent children who love us both. A moment of strange resolve. Earlier tonight, after we tucked the kids in, I slipped outside to the backyard. The air was crisp and the stars shimmered above. I sat on our old wooden bench, recalling the night we first moved in, how we marveled at the open sky, how she said, "I can't wait to watch our family grow here." So much has changed. She found new ways to degrade me, and I eventually saw her for who she was. Yet here we remain. She joined me outside, sat a foot away, silent. For a moment, we stared at the sky together, lost in separate thoughts. She spoke quietly. "Tyler, do you hate me?" I sighed, answered honestly, "No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you like I used to." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but said nothing else. We stayed like that for a few minutes before she stood and retreated inside. Maybe she wanted me to follow. I didn't. She started crying softly, apologizing again, saying she never intended to tear me down, that it was her way of coping with her own frustrations. I listened, but my chest felt numb. Maybe the love we once had was too wounded to revive. Maybe she was only sorry now because she saw me slipping away. For the kids, we agreed not to escalate things, at least not to a full-blown separation yet. She said she'd work on her negativity. I said I'd keep being civil. An uneasy compromise. We parted ways that night, she to our bed, me to the couch, a silent acknowledgement that while we might share a house, we didn't share a marriage in the real sense anymore. The present dilemma. And so we remain. Two people in a single home, parenting effectively enough, no major fights. On the surface, we appear normal, but we're not. We're two hollow souls avoiding each other's eyes. She tries to be less critical, and I appreciate the absence of jabs, though it feels forced, as if she's stepping on eggshells. Meanwhile, I no longer yearn for her approval. I no longer watch her for hints of affection or acceptance. I've grown used to the emptiness between us. Sometimes I think, maybe this is all we can manage until the kids are older. Then we'll divorce quietly or drift apart so thoroughly that separation becomes a formality. Part of me wonders if, in time, we might truly reconcile. But that would require trust and respect, both absent. The kids for now remain unaware of the deeper rift. They see us cooperating for their needs and not suspecting how close we came to imploding. We shield them from that pain. Truth be told, I feel a cautious sense of power in being free from her hold. She can't hurt me with her words anymore because I no longer base my worth on her opinion. She tries to behave now, tries to be nice, but the damage is done. I see her fleeting remorse, but I can't forget the years of contempt. We're stuck in this uneasy arrangement, living a lie for the sake of two innocent children who love us both. A moment of strange resolve. Earlier tonight, after we tucked the kids in, I slipped outside to the backyard. The air was crisp and the stars shimmered above. I sat on our old wooden bench, recalling the night we first moved in, how we marveled at the open sky, how she said, "I can't wait to watch our family grow here." So much has changed. She found new ways to degrade me, and I eventually saw her for who she was. Yet here we remain. She joined me outside, sat a foot away, silent. For a moment, we stared at the sky together, lost in separate thoughts. She spoke quietly. "Tyler, you hate me." I sighed, answered honestly. "No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you like I used to." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but said nothing else. We stayed like that for a few minutes before she stood and retreated inside. Maybe she wanted me to follow. I didn't. Now I'm in the living room, writing this story as a sort of personal therapy, laying out how I uncovered her cruelty, how I realized I've been living as a figure of ridicule, how I refuse to keep begging for her acceptance. This isn't the story of triumphant revenge or dramatic confrontation. It's more like a quiet revolution, one that changed me from the inside. Her words, "He can't please anyone," were the final push that showed me I'd been wasting years trying to please her. We're not divorced, at least not yet. We remain in the same house, co-parenting, sharing chores, balancing finances. But the marriage as we knew it is gone. Maybe it will limp along like this for months or years, or maybe something else will happen. I don't know. All I know is that I've taken back my sense of self. Her criticisms no longer define me. She can't mold me with her disapproval anymore. If you're reading this, wondering whether you should keep bending for someone who disrespects you, maybe you'll find a piece of your own story here. Sometimes the hardest step is recognizing that no amount of pleasing someone will ever be enough if they don't respect you to begin with. Sometimes you have to let them see you're not afraid to lose them, because the day you fear losing yourself more than losing them, that's the day you truly find your own worth. That's where I stand now, in an awkward truce, uncertain if we'll ever truly reconcile or if we're just delaying the inevitable parting. Strangely, I don't fear the day it ends, because I've learned that nothing is worse than living under scorn disguised as love. So for now, I carry on, focusing on the kids, forging my path day by day, and refusing to be the man she can mock. If she wants to find respect for me somewhere in her heart, that's her choice. But I'm no longer waiting, and that knowledge finally sets me free.